Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 700 Club. I'm Andrew Knox, in for Gordon Robertson today. During an interview with CBN News, Mike Pence says while Donald Trump may be a Republican Party leader, he's not the leader. The former vice president also says it's up to the voters to decide who the party's next candidate for president will be.
Pence spoke candidly about his faith, his relationship with former President Trump, and the events of January 6th. He writes about all three in his new book, So Help Me God. Here's CBN chief political analyst David Brody.
The Museum of the Bible seemed a perfect venue to sit down with Mike Pence in his new bestseller, So Help Me God. The former vice president puts his faith as the cornerstone of his life's journey.
The Bible says, you know, remember the rock from which you were hewn. And in writing this book, I really tried to take people back to where it all began for me. And then my journey, of course, coming to my personal decision to put my faith in Jesus Christ.
And he's relied on his faith ever since, through both pain and early political losses and uncertainty, such as waiting on the Lord after infertility issues in his marriage. That's why the Pences have kept a specific Bible passage above the mantle in each home they've lived.
For us, that verse, Jeremiah 29:11, became a lodestar because it was a place that we could ground in the faith that while our plans had been different early on, and we'd run into some bumps in the road and disappointments that, as the Bible says, God tells us, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, give you a hope and a future.
His future did become bright, rising all the way to vice president.
Defend the Constitution of the United States.
Beside President Donald Trump. It looked like a MAGA match made in heaven. Then came January 6th. Pence writes about those dark days in the book. He details how despite calls for him to step in and send electors back to the states, he knew he could never do that.
From very early on, when this theory of my role began to emerge, as a student of the American founding, it just made no sense to me whatsoever. There's no provision in the Constitution, and there's no provision in the Electoral Count Act for returning votes to states. It was never contemplated.
He does believe, however, that the January 6th committee failed in thoroughly investigating the events of that day. For example, what about reports of FBI informants being in the crowd that day?
Do you think they had any part of an incitement on that day? Do you think it should be investigated?
Well, I think the fact that the January 6th committee was entirely appointed by the Democrat Speaker of the House was a missed opportunity for the country. I thought the opportunity here to really look at what occurred that day in the broadest possible sweep would have been welcome, to do that above politics.
On a personal level, though, the major disappointment for Pence is what happened to his relationship with Donald Trump. The former president's demands for Pence to act that day made him a target.
I was angry that day at the president and the days that followed. But as a Christian, forgiveness is not optional. I prayed for the grace to forgive the president. And I sensed he was deeply remorseful about what had happened on January 6th in the weeks that followed. But David, candidly, when the president returned to the same rhetoric he was using in the days leading up to that tragic day, I thought it was best that we just go our separate ways, and we have.
That separation falls across political lines as well. Pence says it's time for a change.
Is this Donald Trump's party, or do you believe that is an outstanding question at this point? What's your view on that? Because Donald Trump sees it as his party.
Well, I think the Republican Party belongs to Republican voters.
Is he the leader? Is he the leader of this party right now?
I think the former president is a leader in the party.
A leader, okay.
An important voice in the party. But I have great confidence that Republican primary voters are going to do like they've done so many times before. And as we go into the next 2 years, they're going to choose the right standard bearer for this moment in our history.
And although Pence sees Trump as a leader within the party, he's not the force he used to be, a key difference.
I sense people long for the kind of leadership that could unite the American people around our highest ideals, including civility and respect.
While qualities like civility and respect are important, Pence leans on the many life lessons he learned from his father, Edward Joseph Pence Jr., a decorated Korean War veteran. He taught his son about faith, family, and hard work. In his 20s, however, Pence suddenly lost his father, and he never got to say goodbye.
Walking in that hospital door, seeing my mom in the waiting room stand up and say to me, "Dad's gone." Worst moment of my life. You know, but the great thing about a great dad is they never really leave you.
And Ed Pence's favorite song was "That's Life."
It was my dad's favorite song. We listened over and over to Frank Sinatra.
I pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life.
It's all about resilience, picking yourself back up, and getting back in the race. Pretty appropriate after what happened to Pence on January 6th.
I will tell you, that's the way I was raised, is never give up, never stop. I promise you, I'm never going to stop fighting for the conservative values that called me into public service, and I'm going to follow the calling wherever it leads.
Clearly, Mike Pence's story has many unwritten chapters ahead. David Brody, CBN News, at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much, David. And Mr. Vice President, Mike Pence certainly is resilient. I think we'll be seeing much more of him in the coming months. And it's so special to hear much of who Mike Pence is because of his father, the decorated war veteran. The Vice President's book is called So Help Me God, and it is available wherever books are sold. In other news, the federal government has ordered a review of the security of America's power grid. And John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Andrew. The review comes after the recent attack on 2 North Carolina power substations. The shootings damaged equipment and left more than 45,000 customers without power. The order directs officials to study the existing reliability standards for the security of the power grid and to see if they need to be improved. Power transformers are highly visible in thousands of locations across the country and are considered very vulnerable to an attack. Officials are likely to recommend changes such as high-definition cameras, 24-hour surveillance, or opaque walls. Well, the massive storm system that hit much of the country this week is now bringing snow to the Northeast. Parts of New York and New England could get up to 2 feet. And right now, snow, rain, and ice are covering highways in dozens of states.
Because people are not used to it, they think they can drive as fast as they usually can. They can't. So we have a lot of people that are off the road, so disabled vehicles.
Other parts of the country, like North Dakota, are cleaning up from the snow that hit earlier this week. The same system also produced 56 tornadoes in the south, killing at least 3 people and damaging multiple homes. TikTok is now the country's most popular social media app. It's also potentially the most dangerous due to its connection to China. Several states now ban public employees from using it, and lawmakers here in Washington are taking action as well, with the Senate approving a measure this week to ban it from government devices. CBN's Brody Carter reports on concerns over the controversial app and how it could invade users' privacy.
TikTok is being called digital fentanyl by congressional leaders seeking to ban it. They argue it's addicting users, posing a serious threat to national security.
We recognize and understand that the Chinese government is using this app to collect data on citizens here in our country, that they could even access personal information, get access to our financial institutions, and it is a cybersecurity threat that we need to take action against.
South Dakota's Kristi Noem is one of 7 governors barring public employees from using TikTok on government devices.
In fact, if a state employee or someone who contracts with the state does download the app of TikTok or access it, that it'll be a criminal offense.
The trending ban is also gaining traction at the federal level. Wednesday, senators passed Josh Hawley's bill banning TikTok on all government devices.
How much do you think it's appropriate that the Chinese, communist China, let's remember it's communist China, the communist China government should know everything about your movement, your information, anything they want about you?
Senator Rick Scott has championed the bill and understands it's not just government employees who are targets. He tells CBN News he's worried everyone's user data is fair game for China's playbook.
We've got to wake up. I mean, I mean, Chinese drones or TikTok or buying any Chinese product. I mean, China, the government of China has decided to be our adversary. They've decided to build a military to defeat us.
The main concern is TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, which is required by the government to make the app's data available to the Chinese Communist Party. Lawmakers, led by Senator Marco Rubio, want a nationwide ban against TikTok.
Companies under the control of the Chinese Communist Party should not have access, unfettered access, to the private data of millions and millions of Americans that they can then use against us for espionage, for foreign policy, for division.
Policy experts fear the move might get pushback from elected officials who want to take political advantage of the app's massive reach.
If we look back at the midterm cycle, we saw everyone from Amy Klobuchar to Stacey Abrams, doing TikTok dances with influencers. President Biden has invited countless TikTok influencers to the White House. They don't want to ban this because it's politically convenient during the electoral cycles to have it at their disposal.
From a privacy standpoint, Denton says it's hard to tell if your phone could be compromised or susceptible to any China data grab. He recommends just deleting the TikTok app or possibly getting a new phone.
Just because it's insulated to your child's device doesn't mean necessarily the parents, work materials, all those things aren't at risk. So it's very critical that you remove this essentially from your family's tech sphere, right? I mean, get it out of kind of your family's home.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
On the surface, it seems harmless and entertaining, but as that report just shows, there are some big concerns. Andrew.
John, it is encouraging. We are seeing politicians from different sides of the aisle trying to work together on this, and they should. I mean, think about it. The parent company has to report the data to the Communist Party. That is a scary premise. But of course, with the popularity of this app in this country, it's going to be difficult to ban it, especially considering, as mentioned in that piece, for some politicians in an election cycle, they are not going to want to abandon this opportunity to reach millions of people. So if it's in your family in some capacity, please check out what's going on with your kids' and grandkids' use of it.